My beloved child. Something happened last night that quietly changed the way your soulmate sees you. It did not happen in a dramatic room filled with raised voices. There was no sudden confession, no carefully prepared speech, no warning that an ordinary evening was about to open a door neither of them could close again. It began with a simple question asked by someone sitting across from them, a question so unexpected that your soulmate stopped breathing for a moment, because the answer carried your name before they even spoke it. The evening had started harmlessly enough. The air outside was cool, and the city lights reflected across the windows like scattered gold. Your soulmate had agreed to meet someone because they were tired of staying home with thoughts they could not organize. They had been trying to act normal for days, but everything reminded them of you, a familiar song passing through a store, a phrase someone used in conversation, even the silence that arrived when their phone remained untouched on the table. The person with them noticed this before your soulmate realized they were being watched. They noticed the way your soulmate kept glancing toward the entrance whenever the door opened. They noticed how certain questions were answered quickly while others caused a pause. Most of all, they noticed that although your soulmate was physically present, some hidden part of them seemed to be waiting somewhere else. At first, the conversation remained light. They talked about mutual friends, old memories, future plans, and all the ordinary things people discuss when they are trying not to approach the one subject that matters most. Your soulmate smiled at the right moments. They even laughed once, but the sound disappeared too quickly, like it had been borrowed rather than felt. Then the person across from them leaned back and asked, "Where are you really tonight?" Your soulmate tried to avoid the question. They looked down at the glass in front of them, watching a drop of condensation travel slowly toward the wooden table. "I'm here," they answered. But the other person shook their head. "No," they said softly. "Your body is here. Your mind keeps leaving." That sentence unsettled your soulmate because it was true. Their thoughts had been returning to something you once said, something small that you may not even remember. You had spoken those words during a moment when they felt invisible, and although they did not admit it then, your kindness had stayed with them. It had become one of those memories they visited when life felt uncertain. They had tried to dismiss the memory many times. They told themselves you were simply being thoughtful. They told themselves they were reading too much into it. They told themselves that if your connection truly mattered, it would not feel so complicated. Yet every attempt to reduce what they felt only made it rise again in a different form. The person beside them studied their face for another moment and asked, "Is this about that person?" They did not say your name. They did not need to. Your soulmate's expression changed before they could hide it. Their eyes softened, then immediately turned guarded. That tiny reaction revealed more than any confession could have, and the person with them understood that you were not merely a passing thought. You were the unspoken center of everything your soulmate had been avoiding. Still, your soulmate denied it. They said, "It's not that simple." The reply came quickly. "It never is when it's real." For a moment, the noises around them seemed to fade. Silverware touched plates. A chair moved against the floor. Someone laughed across the room. But your soulmate heard all of it as if from far away, because a truth they had worked hard to keep contained was beginning to press against the surface. The person with them did not push immediately. Instead, they changed the subject, giving your soulmate the chance to recover. Yet the energy between them had shifted. What had begun as a casual evening now carried the weight of something unfinished, and your soulmate knew the conversation would return to you. It did. Nearly 20 minutes later, while they were discussing a completely different topic, the other person suddenly asked, "Do they know?" Your soulmate looked confused. "Know what?" "That you compare everyone to them." Those words landed harder than expected. Your soulmate's first instinct was to reject the idea, but their silence betrayed them. Because deep down, they knew it had been happening. When someone else spoke, they noticed whether the voice carried your warmth. When another person showed interest, they wondered whether it felt as honest as the attention you once gave them. Even moments that should have felt new were measured against something you had already awakened. They had not chosen to compare anyone to you. It happened automatically. And that frightened them. They did not want to admit that you had become the standard by which closeness was measured. They did not want to accept that your absence had not weakened what they felt, but sharpened it. Most of all, they did not want to face the possibility that while they were waiting for certainty, you might be learning how to live without them. So they looked away and said, "They probably don't think about me like that." The person across from them answered, "You didn't answer my question." Your soulmate's hands became still. There it was again, that uncomfortable honesty they had spent so much energy avoiding. Did you know how deeply they were affected? Did you understand why they sometimes grew quiet around you? Did you realize that their distance had not always meant disinterest, but confusion? Or had their silence made you believe there was nothing worth waiting for? The thought disturbed them more than they expected. For the first time that night, your soulmate began speaking without carefully controlling every word. They admitted that something about you felt different. They described how you seemed to notice what others missed. They remembered a moment when you looked at them and somehow made them feel understood without asking for an explanation. They did not speak romantically at first. They spoke carefully, as though they were describing a place they were afraid to revisit. But the longer they talked, the more the truth entered their voice. They said you made them feel calm and exposed at the same time. Calm, because they sensed they could be honest with you. Exposed, because honesty would require them to admit how much your presence mattered. They confessed that they had wanted to reach out more than once, but stopped themselves each time, fearing they would say too much or worse, discover that they had waited too long. The person listening did not interrupt. They allowed your soulmate's words to unfold until the truth became impossible to disguise. Then came the first twist. The person with them revealed that they had already noticed your soulmate's feelings months ago. They remembered seeing the two of you together. They remembered how your soulmate's posture changed when you entered the room. They remembered how your soulmate, usually distracted and impatient, listened when you spoke as though nothing else deserved their attention. Your soulmate appeared surprised. "You saw that?" The other person smiled faintly. "Everyone sees it except the two people trying hardest not to." That answer unsettled your soulmate in a different way. They had believed their emotions were hidden. They thought their hesitation had protected them. But suddenly they wondered how many people had seen what they refused to name and whether you had seen it too. That possibility brought both hope and fear. Hope, because perhaps you had sensed the connection. Fear, because perhaps you had sensed it and eventually stopped believing in it. The room felt warmer now. Your soulmate reached for their glass but did not drink. Their thoughts moved back through every missed opportunity, the message they typed and erased, the invitation they nearly sent, the time they wanted to ask you to stay but allowed the moment to pass. They began to understand that indecision is not empty. It leaves evidence. It becomes distance. And distance, when left unexplained, can begin to resemble rejection. The person across from them saw the realization forming and asked, "What are you afraid would happen if you finally told them the truth?" Your soulmate answered after a long pause. "They might say they're done waiting." It was the most honest sentence they had spoken all evening. Not that you would laugh. Not that you would judge them. Not that you would misunderstand. Their deepest fear was that you had once cared, but their silence had exhausted the part of you willing to hope. That admission changed the energy again. Until then, your soulmate had spoken as though they were protecting themselves. Now it became clear that they were grieving something that had not fully ended, but had been left unattended. The other person leaned forward and said, "Then why are you sitting here instead of doing something?" Your soulmate did not answer. Outside, a car passed through the wet street, its headlights sliding across the window and briefly illuminating their face. In that flash, they looked less uncertain and more tired of pretending they did not care, tired of carrying conversations with you only in their imagination, tired of waiting for a perfect moment that never arrived. But there was another layer still hidden. The person with them knew it. They waited until the silence became almost unbearable, then asked the question that changed everything. It was not, "Do you love them?" It was not, "Are you going to contact them?" The question was far more personal. They asked, "If they walked through that door right now and told you they were ready to choose someone else, what would you do?" Your soulmate's face lost all color. For several seconds, they could not speak. The imagined scene appeared too vividly, you standing there, composed but distant, explaining that you had waited as long as you could. Someone else beside you. Someone who had given you clarity instead of uncertainty. Someone who had recognized your value without requiring endless time to decide. Your soulmate tried to breathe through the sudden tightness in their chest. Then they whispered, "I would ask them not to." The other person's eyes narrowed gently. "Ask them not to what?" "To leave." The answer surprised even your soulmate. It came from somewhere beneath pride, beneath fear, beneath every explanation they had used to delay the truth. And once spoken, it remained between them, undeniable. But the person across from them was not finished. "Why?" they asked. Your soulmate looked toward the window. Their reflection stared back at them, surrounded by blurred city lights. For a moment, they seemed to be speaking not to the person beside them, but to the version of themselves that had allowed fear to make so many decisions. "Because," they said slowly, "I think I've been acting like I needed more time when what I really needed was courage." That was the moment the evening truly changed. Your soulmate finally understood that confusion had become a hiding place. They had been waiting for every doubt to disappear before acting, but the doubts were never going to leave first. Courage would have to arrive while uncertainty was still present. Yet even that realization was not the greatest revelation of the night. Because the person with them then reached for their phone. Your soulmate watched, puzzled, as they opened a message and placed the screen face down on the table. "I wasn't going to tell you this," they said. Your soulmate's heartbeat quickened. "Tell me what?" The person hesitated, as though deciding whether revealing the truth would help or hurt. Then they said something that made your soulmate sit completely still. "You had been asking about them too." "Not directly. Not recently. But enough for someone to notice." Your soulmate's guarded expression collapsed for a moment. Hope entered their eyes so suddenly that they could not hide it. They asked when. They asked what you had said. They asked whether you seemed upset, whether you had moved on, whether you still cared. But the person refused to answer all of those questions at once. Instead, they said, "Before I tell you, I need to know something." Your soulmate leaned closer. The surrounding room seemed to disappear. And then came the surprising question, the one they had not expected, the one that forced them to confront what they would truly be willing to do for you. "Are you asking because you miss being wanted," the person said, "or because you are finally ready to love them the way they deserve?" Your soulmate froze. The question removed every comfortable excuse. Missing you was easy. Thinking about you was easy. Even regretting lost time was easy. But loving you the way you deserved would require more than feelings. It would require consistency, honesty, action. It would require them to stop appearing only when loneliness became too heavy and start showing up when vulnerability became uncomfortable. Your soulmate lowered their eyes. For the first time, they were not trying to find the most convincing response. They were searching for the truest one. Minutes passed. The person across from them remained quiet. Finally, your soulmate reached into their pocket, took out their phone, and opened your contact. Your name appeared on the screen, familiar and painful. Their thumb hovered over the place where a message could begin. They typed 4 words. Then deleted them. They typed again. This time, they wrote something longer. Something honest. Something that did not ask you to rescue them from regret, but accepted responsibility for the distance between you. Yet before they could send it, the person beside them turned the phone on the table face up. A message was visible on the screen. It was about you. Your soulmate read the first line, and their entire expression changed. Because the message revealed that the question you had asked about them was not casual curiosity. It was connected to a decision you were preparing to make, a decision that could either reopen the path between you or close it with finality. Your soulmate stared at the screen, then at the unsent message in their own hand. And as the clock moved past midnight, they realized they had only one chance to answer the question they had avoided for far too long. But what they sent next and the hidden truth they finally confessed about why they had kept their distance was something no one in that room was prepared to hear. My beloved child. Your soulmate remained motionless, their thumb resting above the screen as though time itself had slowed to watch what would happen next. The message they had just read echoed louder than every conversation that came before it. It was not dramatic. It was not filled with desperate words. It simply revealed that you had quietly asked someone whether they believed people could still find each other after too much silence. That single question reached deeper than any declaration of love. Your soulmate closed their eyes for a brief moment. They realized you had never been searching for perfect timing. You had been searching for honesty. While they had spent months believing they needed the perfect words, you had only hoped for the courage to hear the imperfect truth. The room suddenly felt different. The laughter from nearby tables faded into the background. The music playing overhead no longer mattered. Even the person sitting across from your soulmate remained silent because they understood this was no longer a conversation between two friends. It had become a conversation between your soulmate and the person they had been avoiding becoming. Without another excuse, without another delay, they erased the carefully written message they had been editing for so long. Instead, they began again. This time, they did not try to sound impressive. They did not search for flawless sentences. They simply wrote what their heart had been trying to say all along. I've spent too much time pretending I wasn't afraid. The truth is, I cared more than I knew how to express. If my silence ever made you question your worth, I'm deeply sorry. It was never about your value. It was about my fear. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I couldn't let another day pass without telling you that meeting you changed something inside me. When they finished, they looked at the message for several long seconds. Their breathing became steady. For the first time in a very long while, they were no longer hiding behind uncertainty. They pressed send. The message disappeared from the screen. There was no immediate reply. Only stillness. But something remarkable happened in that silence. Instead of feeling panic, your soulmate felt peace. Not because they suddenly knew how everything would end, but because they had finally chosen truth over fear. Whether the road ahead would be easy or difficult no longer mattered as much as the fact that they had stopped allowing silence to write the story for them. The person across the table smiled gently. I've been waiting for you to become that version of yourself, they said. Your soulmate looked confused. What do you mean? The version that understands love isn't proven by how long you think about someone. It's proven by what you're willing to risk for them. Those words settled deeply within them. For months, they had mistaken longing for action. They had believed that caring quietly was enough. Now they understood that genuine love grows strongest when honesty finally steps into the light. The evening came to an end. They walked outside beneath a sky scattered with quiet stars. The streets glistened from an earlier rain, reflecting lights that stretched like ribbons across the pavement. Every familiar place somehow looked different, not because the city had changed, but because they had. As they walked home, memories appeared one after another. The first smile you shared. The conversation that lasted longer than either of you expected. The small encouragement you once offered when they doubted themselves. The moment you believed in them before they believed in themselves. They realized none of those memories had ever truly left. They had simply been waiting for the courage to become more than memories. Hours passed. The night slowly gave way to the first soft colors of morning. Then, just as the earliest sunlight touched the horizon, their phone vibrated. Your name appeared. For one heartbeat, they couldn't move. Every possibility rushed through their mind. Would it be goodbye? Would it be forgiveness? Would it be another unanswered mystery? They opened the message with trembling hands. Your reply was beautifully simple. I wondered if I'd ever hear the truth. Thank you for trusting me with it. Your soulmate smiled through tears they had not expected. Not because every question had suddenly been answered. Not because every challenge had disappeared. But because two hearts had finally chosen honesty over assumptions. From that moment forward, neither of you needed to carry conversations only in imagination. Real conversations could finally begin. The journey ahead would still require patience. It would still require understanding. Both of you would need to learn each other's fears, dreams, and hopes more deeply than before. Yet this time, those lessons would not be learned through silence. They would be learned together. And perhaps that is the quiet miracle hidden within this story. Sometimes the greatest breakthrough does not happen when two people discover they love each other. It happens when they stop letting fear speak louder than love. If this story has touched your heart, remember that every meaningful relationship is strengthened by sincerity, compassion, and the willingness to communicate with courage. Whether you see yourself in your soulmate, in you, or in both, may this fictional journey remind you that honest words often arrive just in time to change the direction of a life. May your heart be filled with wisdom when uncertainty appears. May you recognize the people who bring peace into your life. May you have the courage to speak truth with kindness, to listen with patience, and to treasure the connections that inspire you to become your best self. May hope walk beside you even when the road seems quiet, and may every new day bring opportunities for healing, understanding, and genuine love. If this story encouraged you, inspired you, or gave you a moment of hope, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need these words today. Until our next story, may peace surround your heart, may light guide your steps, and may every tomorrow hold the promise of beautiful new beginnings.